my confidence is something that I really struggle with, and I didn't know how to get over it. I just thought, maybe I just have to toughen up or just push through it. I didn't know how to actually work on it or how to build my confidence.
All right, and we are back again, episode 37 of the Box to Box podcast. If you don't know who I am, my name is Jose Tejas. I am the primary host of this show. I am typically joined by my co-hosts, Alina and Andre. We're recording in the middle of the day. They have work and other things going on, so I am here to hold the fort down as usual, but I am not alone. As always, for those who are returning visitors to the show, we have a special guest, and I'm going to tee him up here in a second. But before we do, as I always say, guys, please, if you haven't already, like the video, subscribe to the channel. It really does help us grow more than you know. And as always, Box to Box is presented by GOLZtv. GOLZtv, where you can find all of your free, unlimited, fan-made footy content. Today, head to GOLZtv. All right, we are jumping into the show, and I am joined today by, honestly, man, an inspiring, I should say, content creator for me personally. Winners Club podcast, to me, tells some pretty powerful stories from figures that I would consider to be very relevant to any footy fan, but especially the competitive fan who's on that player's journey right now, trying to level up their mindset, level up their physical activity in a number of different ways. We'll talk about it. But I am joined today by Bryce Wilson of the Winners Club podcast. Bryce, look, man, I'm so glad that you're here. I'm glad we're finally doing this. How are you, man?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely, bro. I'm glad that you're here. And it's kind of crazy. We're both technically in the same region of the country here in the broader Dallas-Fort Worth area. Hopefully we get a chance to do something really cool in person later on. I'm super excited about that. But for today, I definitely want to talk about your journey as a content creator, as we typically do on Box to Box. I think it's interesting, right? Because your channel and your content, for those who haven't seen it, and again, we'll link that channel down below in the description. It's changed so much over the years. And I definitely want to talk about kind of your journey as a content creator and why you felt the need to kind of make those changes over time. But we'll get there. But as we always do on the show, the first question I always ask every content creator, Bryce Wilson, who are you today?
So it's a big question. And I do have to start off with my faith, my faith in God. So he kind of guides wherever I go. And my really goal in life is to be the best that I can be. And as we'll talk about, that may take different forms. So I was a soccer player. I'm a soccer fan. I'm a soccer coach also. And so it'll take different forms, but I want to be the best that I can be.
I love that, man. That's a great response. And honestly, that was probably one of the most clear, concise responses we've had to that question.
Yes.
So I love it, man. I love it. This is great. Well, look, I think, people want to understand that, even that response a little bit more, right? We can kind of peel the layers back one at a time, so to speak. But let's definitely start at the beginning. I think it's the best way to kind of guide, the audience through your journey, not just as a creator. That's in fact, I would say maybe that's the latter half of our conversation today. Let's start with you as a fan, right? You're a massive fan. You're a coach of the game. I imagine you have a pretty extensive playing background. So walk me through what that's like and what it's like just even being, an American soccer fan before all of the hype that it's generated over the last few years.
Yeah, so I started playing soccer when I was about 3 years old. My parents just threw me in a camp, and I really gravitated toward it. So I just kept playing through middle school, high school, and played club with FC Dallas. I heard you did too.
Yep.
So I played club, and then I played in collegiate level. I had the desire to go pro. I played collegiate level for a D2 school called Harding in Arkansas, and I had the desire to go pro. But after playing collegiate level, I had to make the toughest decision of my life and to stop playing. And I decided to stop playing. And since I had all this knowledge and experience, I didn't want to just give it up. So that's why I became a coach. And then once I became a coach for a couple of years and really enjoyed doing that. And then after that, that's when I realized that I wanted to get into more of the mental side of that. But you also asked about me as a soccer fan. I really got into love of the game whenever I started watching Ronaldinho. When I started watching those Nike commercials, with him kicking the ball and freestyling, I really
Joga Bonito, right?
Yes, Joga Bonito.
Yes.
Yes. So I just found the love of the game, and so that really inspired me to go outside in the backyard and work on these freestyle skills all day, every day, and really love the game. So I'm a big fan of Barcelona, especially when Messi was there. I'm heartbroken that he left, but yeah, so still a fan of Barcelona. Also was a big fan of Rooney, so I'm somewhat of a Man United fan. I'm not too big of a fan of them right now, but still, those are my two top teams. And yeah, so that's a little bit about my playing career and me as a fan.
Awesome, man. I love that. Let's peel that playing career back a little bit, though, because
Mm-hmm.
I think we do have a lot of common, right? You
Mm-hmm.
mentioned we both camp in that kind of, competitively anyway, in that
Mm-hmm.
FC Dallas youth system. And it's one of the, when you think about youth soccer, the Dallas, Texas area, and even more broadly, right, on
Mm-hmm.
in America in general, academy soccer, youth soccer, we're still very, very young on this side of the world when it comes to developing
Mm-hmm.
systems that bring out the best in our youth players. I came up in that system in FC Dallas. I graduated like in '09. I also went to a D2 college to play soccer for only about a year and a half before I decided to call it quits myself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious from your perspective. Every player calls it quits for different reasons, right?
Mm-hmm.
We'll get to the reason why you felt like you had to hang it up and kind of move into that coaching route. But your journey from FC Dallas into that D2 level of college soccer, I think a lot of players underestimate how difficult that really is. Like grinding it out day in and day out, sacrifices that you have to make as a teenager, right? When you want to be maybe right out there with your friends, socializing, enjoying high school, making the best out of those years. People don't realize that when you're competing at a high level, you're giving a lot of things up on that front. Talk to me about, just your journey and what it was like to kind of put your head down, be focused on, going from that path to pro, but through the lens of college soccer.
Right. Growing up, so I played different sports growing up, basketball and baseball. So, but I didn't take soccer seriously and really decide I wanted to go pro until about middle school. And that's when I decided I was going to train outside of our team training and really put in the work. So in high school, or even leading up to high school, when I wanted to be varsity, so I'd do push-ups every day. I would go in the garage when it was raining or too hot, because it's hot in Dallas, so
Very hot, very hot.
Yeah, so I had to go to in the garage and just do some touches, or I'd go on Friday or Saturday when people might be out there hanging out with friends and stuff. I just go out to the field and train. So I really put in the work to get to where I was, and I actually did enjoy that. I didn't feel like I missed out on anything. I just really did enjoy the grind. And but once I got to college, I did see that I was kind of working harder, not smarter. And we can probably talk about it, but the pay to play system in the academy for growing up, where I got there and I realized, so I had like the talent growing up, but I wasn't in academy and club that often or that much. So the players that grew up playing club since they were 5 years old, they just had all this technical and tactical awareness that I wasn't really aware of. And I was just playing catch up once I got to college.
Yeah, no, and I do want to bring that up actually, because I think it's really interesting, right? The pay to play system enables the most affluent families in this country to be able to have access to the best resources to improve your game. At the same time, you probably have access to connections and relationships that progress your career in a way that those who never touch club soccer get a chance to do it. So, it's really, really interesting. When you say, and again, just to clarify for the audience, when you say you felt like you were a step behind, break that down a little bit more. What aspects of your game do you think could have been improved if you had entered club soccer at an earlier age?
So I played rec up until 12, and then I went into club soccer at 13, and it still wasn't. And the players, the higher up club team, they're the players that you went in when you were really young. So it was kind of hard to break into those higher up club teams. And so I was playing at a club team that wasn't the highest level. And then when I got to college, I realized that my touch was really important. I didn't really work on those things. Some like tactics that I didn't really take into account. I just kind of used my speed or talent, or my coach didn't really know about that stuff. They didn't teach us that stuff. So I was just playing. And then, so once I got to college, I realized that my touch was a super important aspect that I really needed to work on. And then just the tactics that I had to understand.
Yeah, that's interesting. Is there one piece of advice you would maybe give to, because there's plenty of these players out there, right? Not everybody can afford. In fact, a lot of players that fall through the cracks because they can't afford to be a part of this pay to play system. And it's unfortunate, but there's really nothing that a lot of us can do other than bring awareness to the fact that this is a problem. But what would you tell the aspiring youth player, right? That's coming up, that's putting in the thousands of touches a day to really get to their game to where it needs to be, but can't afford to be a part of that club soccer system? Is there a piece of advice you would give to them that can maybe help them feel like they're on a level playing field?
Yeah, so I'd say focus on what you can control. A lot of the things, the pay to play thing and all that's out of our control. So for the player, work on the things that you can actually control. So for me, just personally, soccer wise, I would just say really work on your touch. So there's a lot of juggling, a lot of passing against the wall, dribbling, all those things, because that'll really help you work on your stamina, things like that. Just the small things that you might not have all the skill and the ability and the knowledge of a higher up player, but if you do the small things right, then every coach will really appreciate that.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I think the more touches you get, the better. I mean,
Definitely.
obviously, right, you want it to be against the best competition available, but
Hmm.
at the same time, as long as you're getting those touches, I think so many players I grew up with at a youth level, maybe you can relate here.
Hmm.
A lot of them felt that the Tuesday and Thursday evening practices or training sessions that we got every week were enough. And
Hmm.
sometimes the coaches or the trainers didn't really, I don't think they really reinforced the mission that, hey, we're showing you how to have good form when you come out here to train with us, but you need to take a lot of what you're learning and go
Hmm.
practice it at home on your
Yeah.
own and get those touches to where they need to be. I
Hmm.
mean, as someone who's also a coach, I don't know. Do you feel like that is still kind of an issue? Do you feel like players aren't doing enough of that today?
Yeah, I think you definitely need to be working out and training outside of just your team training. If you're just doing the hour or so or 2 hours with your team uh, every, maybe twice or 2 times, 3 times a week, then you're not going to get improve as much as you could. Another thing that I forgot to mention earlier is like growing up, I didn't know what I didn't know. So I was training and I worked hard, but I was just going out the field and shooting and stuff like that, which isn't really going to help you and isn't really applicable to the game when you actually go to the game you want to improve. So I think that now we have so many resources, that's why I started making content, because there's so many resources to learn how to train and develop drills to help you improve in these areas. Because it has to be very focused on what you're actually going to be playing in the game. Like, it has to be very functional to what you're doing. So I think there's tons of resources now. So I encourage the players to research and find uh, different influencers or athletes that show drills of what you can do, and really focus on putting in the work outside of just your team training.
Yeah, it's massive. I mean,
Hmm.
and I love the word you use, functional, right?
Hmm.
Because it's super important to understand. Like, yeah, just going out to a random field, even if you bring a friend out there to play keeper and you're just shooting one on one, it
Hmm.
doesn't that you can't take that and use that in a game very often, if at all, right? I
Hmm.
mean, you need
Right.
to actually like set up cones and drills in a way that mimic the situations you're really going to be in on the pitch
Hmm.
on game day. That to me is massive. So I agree wholeheartedly. I think a lot of players. Maybe not so much today. I think maybe there's a lot of content out there that reinforces the fact that you need to be training on your own. But
Hmm.
I know leading up to this point, it really was a massive issue. I think it separated a lot of the players at a youth level between those who are going to be able to go on and compete at the college level and maybe even pro versus those who just aspired to be there but never really got there. I think it was always
Hmm.
interesting.
Hmm.
Well, with that said, I also want to kind of pivot back to something else you mentioned, being a Barcelona fan.
Hmm.
I think the fandom aspect of players here in this country is so interesting
Hmm.
because I think we have a unique opportunity as Americans. And what I mean by
Hmm.
that is for the biggest clubs and the biggest players in the world when it comes to this game, they're not local to us at all,
Hmm.
right? They are based overseas or based in Europe or South America or anything along those lines. And this means that as an American, we have unique opportunities now to kind of pick and choose the clubs and the players that we get to show our fandom for, right? That we get
Hmm.
to support. And sometimes it's due to family. Like you mentioned Barcelona. For me, my entire family for years has supported Barcelona. So I didn't really
Hmm.
have a choice. Like it was
Yeah.
just, I was born and boom, I was supporting Barcelona from the get go.
Hmm.
But when it comes to the Premier League, for example, you mentioned United. I support Arsenal, and it was
Hmm.
really simply because of the era I grew up in. I started supporting, a few years before, basically when Arsene Wenger got there,
Hmm.
and then that culminated with the Invincibles in an 03-04 season. So, the type of soccer or football they were playing was very, very attractive to me. But the Barcelona fandom, it was just kind of built in. It was there because of the foundation I had with my family.
Hmm.
Where does the motivation for your support and your fandom really come from? Is it more family based? Is it you just watching how attractive that football or that soccer really
Hmm.
is? I mean, what really was it?
Yeah, it didn't come from my family because I'm pretty much the only one that plays soccer in my family. My parents didn't know anything about soccer. Like, how I even got into soccer, they just threw me into a sports camp, and then I just gravitated towards soccer. But
I love
so I
it.
was the first one who really became a soccer fan. And as I said before, watching the Nike commercial, the Jogo Bonito with Ronaldinho, that's how I really found the beauty of the game, rather than just the American style, where we're just running and kicking. So I found the beauty of the game and really fell in love with it that way. And obviously, he was on Barcelona, and Messi was also on there, so that's why I gravitated towards Barcelona. It's kind of cliche, the biggest club in the world, best players in the world, but that's how American gets into the game.
Yeah, no, 100%, man. I think, and plus, I think the way Barcelona played, right? I think at that
Yeah.
time, they were almost revolutionizing the game. The Pep era and the prime Barcelona era, Messi at his peak powers. I think that it's still to this day the best brand of soccer I've ever seen in my life, and I
Definitely.
don't know if in my lifetime another team will replicate that. I think Pep has tried his best at Manchester City, but
Yeah.
it's just interesting to kind of listen to other fans, especially on this side of the world, talk about why they support the clubs that they do overseas. And I think we need more of that. I asked on an interview not too long ago, and I really want to kind of ask you the same question. When you compare the fandom that some of the fans have here for some of the biggest clubs in the world,
Hmm.
what do you think it'll take for American soccer, MLS clubs maybe, to see that same type of fandom? Because I think it's something that I think diehard MLS fans are really kind of waiting for. Soccer fans in general on the side of the world are really kind of waiting for our league to be not taken a little more seriously. I mean that too in terms of quality, but even just see the rivalries, the level of fandom, the level of where a fan is willing to go essentially to support their clubs, the foundation that these other big clubs have. What's it going to take for MLS and American soccer to start seeing some of that from your
Hmm.
perspective?
Yeah, I think overseas, the advantage that they have is they have the tradition. So they've been out there for decades and decades. They've had the team. And so, kind of like what you said, the family, they've groomed all the kids that come in. They're fans. Their kids are fans. So it's just tradition. And that's why even like the rivalry, like let's say El Clasico, it's so big because it's been there for decades. And so I think that's the one thing that MLS is missing. We just don't have the years put in. So I think it'll grow over time. But one thing I think we can do to be proactive now is to focus on the stories of these athletes. And that's kind of what I'm starting with this podcast. I might be jumping the gun, but that's why I'm starting with this podcast to illustrate the stories of these athletes so that you become diehard fans of them. Because like for me with Messi, I watched all his documentaries, all his interviews. Like I know everything about him pretty much, and that's just because I'm a fan of him. And with a lot of these MLS players, you might see them play, and but you don't really know much about him, so you're not going to be very diehard. You might just be, oh, I like the way he shoots free kicks or something, but you're not going to know all about him. You're not going to show up to every game. So I think it's important to really illustrate the stories of these athletes so we can become really diehard fans.
Yeah, no, 100%, man. I agree. Stories, the power of telling stories is
Mm-hmm.
immense, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
you said it before, and I've kind of been the same way. Watching every documentary, every interview that I possibly can, following other creators who cover Barcelona because I
Mm-hmm.
just want to get every take possible. And then, of course, right, as a fan, be able to form your own opinion on whatever's going on, whether that's drama within the club or whether it's just the latest result, anything in
Mm-hmm.
between. I think MLS clubs need that at scale. I think the Apple TV deal was great for that because now the clubs are really kind of forced to tell
Mm-hmm.
stories and make their players as relevant on the internet, on social media as they possibly can. So we'll kind of see how all of that goes. But you mentioned, right, your channel and being able to tell stories and kind of, how you're going about that today with players that I still feel are still in the earliest days of their journey, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're college athletes or they're coming up in a pro system and
Mm-hmm.
you're just kind of starting to understand why they do what they do and where they see themselves going. So
Mm-hmm.
talk to me about your channel, man. I mean, so I've seen videos from like 3 years ago where
Yeah.
it was definitely more of Coach Bryce, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you were kind of being more instructional and showcasing a player's skills or how to do a certain move on the field. Where did the inspiration for Winners Club really come from, and how has the channel really changed over time?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I started making soccer content about drills and to teach athletes or soccer players how to improve themselves. Because, like I said, when I was in college playing college soccer, once I stopped, I didn't want to just give away or throw away all the knowledge that I had of the game. I felt like I had a decade of experience. So I was like, I at least want to give back to some degree. So I started making content online through Instagram and YouTube, just showing drills. And then I started actually coaching in person. I'm actually a youth soccer coach now with FC Dallas, so giving back in that sense. But over time, as I was doing it for a year or two, a couple of years, then a lot of the questions I got, they'd ask, "Hey, how do you improve your dribbling skills or shooting skills?" And I could give them an answer and drill. But then a lot of questions I got was, "How do you improve confidence?" Or "What do I do when my coach says this? How do I respond to failure?" And I didn't really have an answer to that. I could just give my own experience. Whenever I looked up stuff, there wasn't much information on that. And so that's when I started trying to get into the mental side of the game and sports psychology and helping athletes improve their mindset. And that's another degree of how I started the podcast. I wanted to hear about the like realities of being an athlete, because when I became a college athlete, I didn't know that there was all these things that we'd have to go through, just the mental side of it, and just the busyness, all the where it's nonstop. You have to be training and school, all this stuff nonstop. You have to travel, all these things that I didn't really see. You just see the Instagram picture of them holding a trophy or something, like, oh, I want to do that, but you don't see what goes on behind the scenes. And so I wanted to illustrate like the realities of it, and the highs and the lows, and how they got through that.
Yeah. Did you feel like you were filling a gap in the market? Like, I know for one of the most annoying things being, and this is in the earliest days, probably like 5+ years ago, in the earliest days of like YouTube, for example, you still to this day, in some form or fashion, you have to type in soccer to kind of find some of the videos that you're looking for in the search bar. Mm-hmm. And I always felt like even if I did that and honed in on certain keywords, it was difficult for the algorithm to feed me the content I was always looking for. So, I mean, when you, for the mental side of the game, right? Things that aren't widely advertised by coaches or trainers or anybody in between. Did you feel like I want to start the podcast because I don't see enough of this content in the market?
Yeah, and that's actually how I started the soccer drills in the beginning too. I would see the drills and I was like on the YouTube, and I was like, I could do that better. It could be better, more well done. So I started making that. And same thing with this. You can ask almost any player and they'll say the mental side is important and you need to work on your confidence, but then there's no content on how you can actually build confidence as an athlete, or like what the reality of being an athlete is. So I wanted to make content on that, interview these athletes. I want to grow and get bigger and bigger caliber athletes, because like I said, MLS, there's not many interviews of what they go through, or just their whole stories. Pulisic, I mean, he might have some because he's just the top of the top, but even let's say McKinney, because he actually went to FC Dallas too. McKinney, I don't think he's been on my podcast or hasn't really illustrated his story. So stuff like that, I think it could really grow.
Yeah, I think so too. I think finding for aspiring content creators, right? People who are maybe watching this and thinking to themselves, okay, is there, is there a gap in the market? I think most aspiring creators feel like there isn't. Like everything out there has possibly been talked about already. I don't feel that way. I think that the world's constantly changing, and there's always going to be a newer audience for you to serve. But when you think about the audience that you're serving, I would say it's twofold. You have the players that you coach, and then you have obviously the audience that you're serving through your channel. Is there a type of content they seem to be craving most from you? Is it more of the mental side that you're offering in terms of tips and advice or through these interviews? Or do you think it's more tactical instruction from you as a coach?
Well, I started with the tactical instruction and the soccer drills. So I think that's still what they're looking for, but that's just not where I'm passionate about now as a creator. And so I think that's one of the issues and struggles you have to deal with as a creator. Like, do I want to just serve only what my fans want, or do I want to serve what I'm really interested in now and where I can see the future and the vision? So I've really gotten into the mental side of the game and illustrating stories. So I'm going to go into that route. And I think, right now it might not be exactly what they want, but long term, I feel like there's a lot of room for growth and a lot of room for opportunity that I see long term. So you have to just believe in yourself in that aspect and doing what you love that way. And over time, hopefully it'll pay off.
Yeah, I think it will. I think it really will, because the mental side of the game doesn't get talked about enough. And one thing I'm curious about just hearing you say this is I wonder how the mental side of the game has evolved since maybe you and I were playing, right? And the mental obstacles that existed back then versus what exists now. I mean, as you do these interviews with aspiring pro athletes, like when you talk to them about their mental, how do you feel like it's relatable to what you kind of went through as a player, or are you learning every single interview?
Yeah, as a player, my confidence is something I really struggle with, and I didn't know how to get over it. I just thought, maybe I just have to toughen up or just push through it. I didn't know how to actually work on it or how to build my confidence. And I'm hearing with a lot of these athletes, even though, as a college level, they're elite athletes, so they really been working on these things. They're having like practical things that they actually do, whether it's visualizing or positive self-talk or telling themselves affirmations. So they're actually working on these things, working on their mindset, instead of just leaving it up to, just the tide of how the life goes. So I think they're actually working on it, and that's the difference. So I'm learning like small things here and there, and hopefully I can give that to the audience of here's small things that you can work to improve your confidence or whatever it is. So the young athletes, they can use that and apply it to their game.
Yeah. And I'm curious on that front when it comes to application, right? Because you actually have an opportunity, and I'm sure you already do. You have a strong opportunity to take what you learn during these interviews, right? And depending on what's presented to you, and potentially package it up and serve it to the kids that you coach, right? I mean, and making sure that they learn from all the experiences that you're having, either as a coach or as a content creator. So, I mean, what's that process been like? I mean, how do you actually go about coaching someone and improving the mental side of their game?
Well, actually, I think I forgot to bring it, but I did actually write a book over this stuff during the pandemic. I know that the mental side of it is something that's not really talked about or isn't really doesn't have a resource on how to actually improve in the game. So I just wrote a guide on how to improve your mindset. I just researched the best athletes in the world. So I researched Messi, Ronaldo, how they build their confidence, how they build their courageous ability, how they build their discipline, and kind of took the tips that they showed through their interviews or just their stories, and gave like practical tips to improve those areas. So there's a lot of different ways, but so I kind of packaged it in that way.
I love it. Okay, awesome, man. Yeah, we'll definitely share some notes about that book. I think it's going to be interesting. I'm really kind of curious too. Just when you mentioned two things there, confidence and discipline. For the young player today, maybe the young middle schooler or early stage high schooler who's really kind of starting to hone in on the sport they want to play, and maybe it's soccer, and really kind of focus all of their efforts on that. What would you say is most important? Because I'm getting ready to be a parent myself, and I'm really kind of curious when you think about a mental trait or a mental skill that you want to turn into a character trait. Would you prioritize confidence over discipline, or the other way around?
I don't know if there's one that's more important. Like, if you have confidence but you don't have any discipline, you're not going to be able to put in the work to get better. Or if you have discipline but you don't have any confidence, you're not going to be able to perform in the game. So I don't know if there's one is better than the other. But what I will say, let's say with confidence, to actually work on it, one of the things that you might have heard about is self-talk and just what you say to yourself, because that's something that I didn't realize as a player. I would mess up and then I would say, oh, you're a horrible player. What, you idiot, why did you do that? And I didn't even think about that was really degrading my confidence. It wasn't until I became a coach that I realized that's one of the most important ways to build your confidence, in how you either build your confidence or tear it down. Is really just the words you say to yourself. So even if you have a mistake, tell yourself that you'll get it the next time, or that keep going, and be encouraging to yourself and speak to yourself like a friend. That's one way to do it. And with discipline is just doing habits, being consistent, working out, training every day, or at least every other day, or whenever you can, because that's kind of what I was doing. I was working out hard, but then I would take a break where I don't feel like it today. But if you just stay consistent, that I'm going to work out 5 times a week, and just stay consistent with that. And those are some ways you can build in those areas.
Yeah, I thought what you just said right there, right? Sticking to it. I had a coach when I was coming up who he would use the word grit a lot, and so when I asked him to define grit, he did it in the scrappiest way possible. He didn't give me a textbook definition. He said it's your ability to stick to it, the stick to itness, right, if you will, and the ability to make sure that even if you're having a down day, right, something throws you off, a case of the Mondays, if you will, your ability to stick to what you mentally committed to prior is what's going to take you from point A to point B in a very, very positive way. I wholeheartedly agree with that. I think it's something that doesn't get talked about enough. And maybe it's because, I don't know, do you feel like there was a stigma previously with our generations or previous generations with players where maybe we just felt like it wasn't okay to talk about the mental side of the game? I feel like as though Gen Z and generations behind them are going to be very comfortable airing out how they feel mentally, emotionally, and making sure they're plugged in from that perspective. Do you think that maybe it wasn't as prevalent before just because there wasn't really the environment to kind of speak on those issues?
Yeah, we just weren't educated on it. If I told my parents or my coach that I'm just not confident, they'd be like, all right, just toughen up, just keep going, work harder. Like, they're not going to tell you, they're not going to give you any tips or advice or anything to really help you actually work on it. So you just have to deal with it yourself. And then you might think that something's wrong with you if you're not as confident. So I think just the education of what it is. There's a lot of athletes, Michael Phelps and all these Simone Biles are all talking about mental health now. But I do think the issue with that is now a lot of people associate mental health with mental illness, and they think, oh, it's just about depression or anxiety. And if I don't have that, then now what are we talking about it? Or they're scared to talk about it because they don't really want to talk about depression or anxiety yet. But I think the mental health it's kind of the same thing as physical health. If you want to work on if you got injured, that's like a mental illness kind of. You have to go to a doctor for that. But if you just want to improve physically and get better stamina or something like that, then you have to work on it. Just like mental health, if you want to improve your confidence, you have to work on that in the same way.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and it's like anything else, right? I always say that I believe any character trait is first a skill that you kind of have to master before it becomes part of who you really are. And that includes your confidence, your ability to mentally get past obstacles. And I feel like you're right. There were so many coaches, my parents sometimes included, that felt like, hey, it's just like work harder, right? Work harder, put your head down. Once you achieve it, the confidence will kind of come. But there was nothing functional or tactical that I could really take and say, okay, I can apply that to what I do every day, and that's going to help my mental. That's really going to help me grow as a person. So when you think about how that translates from your time as a player, your time as a coach, to now you being a content creator and a coach simultaneously, I feel like there are a ton of people who maybe out there who are fans and don't have the confidence, right, or the mental fortitude to pick up a camera, right, put themselves in front of it and create content that they know could be valuable to someone out there, to an audience out there. What would you say to that person, right? How important is confidence on that front?
I'd say just start. You're never going to feel completely confident, completely ready to do so. And then just a helpful tip is you don't have to tell anybody. Like when I first posted my first YouTube video, I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell my friends or any family or anybody. I just made it. I put it out there, and I hope nobody saw it. Over time, some people gradually saw it. But after I had been doing it for some weeks and months, then I had a little more confidence in it. And so I was more confident telling people about it. But yeah, just start, and you don't have to tell anybody. You can do it in secret, in private, and just get better over time.
Yeah, you really can. I'll say that right now. I think everybody who's a content creator now kind of knows this, right? It's like probably no one's going to watch your first video. Like people are worried about, hey, how does my voice sound, or how do I look, or am I trying too hard on camera? Like, don't worry about that, right? Like, be confident. Understand that at some point somebody might watch this, but odds are that's not going to be for a long time. So just get comfortable in front of camera, get really good at how you bring the story to the potential audience in the future, and focus on getting better with every single upload. And I think that's all you really can do, right? But I don't know if there's much more that either of us could really tell to an aspiring content creator other than be yourself, because I think the moment that you're not yourself, right? You try to copy and be someone else is when it starts to not go off the rails, but it's you're not going to be as passionate as you were. You feel like you're faking it till you make it, and I don't think that's the way to really be a content creator.
Yeah, I think in this day and age, the advantage we have now with content creators is being ourselves and the authenticity part of it. Because back then, a couple years ago, the TV was big and just commercials, all those things were big, but it was inauthentic. And I think now it's shifted towards YouTube or just social media, and the reason is for that is because of the authenticity and people just be themselves. So people really, as fans, are really wanting to connect with people and want to connect with real people to be themselves.
Yeah, and I'm big on that, and I want your perspective from that lens too, because I think you mentioned authenticity. What really resonates with me, especially when it comes to not just soccer content, but I would say sports content or anything that kind of generates a fandom around it. You're seeing this massive shift in media right now, right? Where legacy media, it's not being cast aside. I think we're just at a stage where Gen Z specifically doesn't have any emotional connection to the pundits or the analysts that they're watching that really kind of approach the game in a very analytical way. They toe the line. They don't really cross that line very often. But what that makes it seem like is that it's not truly authentic. They're not a fan like I am. And so you're seeing this emergence of independent journalists and content creators who are taking the game they love and spinning content around it in a way that resonates with true fans. And so you're seeing, I always kind of make this comparison. You're seeing folks like myself or even my younger brothers. We would rather go watch someone like Castro 1021 on Twitch talk about Manchester United as opposed to, I don't know, Ali Moreno or Gary Neville or any of these pundits that you see, even the ones like Gary Neville who have those strong playing ties to that club. I mean, why do you think, I mean, we could talk about how authentic that is, right? But how important do you think fan-made content is going to be for the future of the sport?
It's super important. We're searching for relatability. TV and the pundits, they worked for a certain amount of time for decades before, but now we're starting to shift, and we really want to relate to somebody. You really want to sound like it's our friend that we're talking to, or we're hearing. Like that, I think that's the vibe you should be going for. Like going for if you could be someone, you could be sitting in the room with your friend, and they're talking like a Twitch streamer. And they're talking to you about what they thought about the game, and that's kind of the vibe that we're yearning for. We don't really want it to be fake anymore. We want it to be authentic and be personable.
Yeah, 100%, man. I like, it's not even like yes, authentic, personable, and it's not even like I don't care so much, and a lot of fans do, right? I think in the millennial age group, a lot of fans care about wanting someone who's very, very knowledgeable, someone who knows ball and can break the game and what happened down to me in a way that makes it resonate from a high level educational perspective. Those are great. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be knowledgeable about the sport. I think that there's just a way to approach it that bleeds fandom, right? That bleeds emotion, where it makes where I strongly resonate with what you're saying, and more inclined to tune into you time and time again, because I feel like you're a fan, like I'm a fan. So when you think about, I don't know, where some of these more professional or legacy media broadcasts are really going from your perspective, do you think that they're going to start to mimic? I think we're kind of already seeing it already, but start to mimic what independent media and fan made videos or content are really doing. I feel like that's already starting to happen a little bit.
I think they're going to have to, because it's just that's what's going to take over. They're either going to be left behind, or they're going to try to have to copy us. But I think the emotion. I think what you said about the emotion is big, because these pundits, they talk about different games every week, and obviously they don't care about each game, but they just have to do it because it's their job. But a lot of these Twitch streamers or YouTubers, they're talking about games they actually are passionate about and they really want to talk about. So that's the difference. But I think, we're definitely going to see them get on TikTok and stuff like that. I don't know. I don't know how they're going to do it, because I still think that these smaller content creators, where they're actually real fans, they still have the advantage in that sense of the authenticity and relatability. But they're going to have to do something to relate.
I agree. I mean, it's kind of like, I don't know if you're an NFL fan or not, but like I could tell, I see, when I see NFL broadcast and I see, a stream pop up on Nickelodeon, or I see a stream pop up on, for Monday Night Football, but it's the Manning brothers who are doing the cast. And I think that they are slowly starting to get it, right? That like nothing against the commentators or the analysts that are typically, casting these games or providing strong analysis around it. It's not that they're not great. They're just, we've grown to a point as fans where it just is, it's not enough, right? We almost want more. We want to feel the passion. There's so many soccer friends in my friend group, and I don't know if you resonate with this at all, who would rather watch, the Mexican broadcast or the Spanish broadcast, because more emotion comes out at times than when you watch the same exact match on Fox Sports 1 or Fox Sports 2. And I don't know. I mean, I feel like the emotion and how, regardless of how small the opponent is, right? It could be Mexico versus Suriname. It could be U.S. versus Grenada, like it was Nations League this past weekend. Whatever it may be, I think if the person who's offering any sort of commentary is emotional about what's going on, it's hard not to be invested. I think it's why major tournaments like the World Cup gather so many fans, because there's so much emotion behind it. I don't know, from your perspective, especially, when you think about something like FC Dallas, right, which we both have in common, is that what it's going to take? I mean, are like, how do we grow the individual matches that we're seeing in the broader American soccer landscape to a point where we're just as bought in as when you watch United or as when I watch Arsenal?
That is a big issue. The commentators, where they're have to be entertaining and energetic and enthusiastic about what they're watching, instead of just kind of doing it because they're getting paid for it and just saying things that fluidly, but they're not really passionate about it. I think that's the advantage overseas, European games. These clips, they can go viral just because you can hear the passion in the voice. And it's like the Sergio Aguero clip, where he scored the game. Everyone knows that one just because of the commentator. If the commentator wasn't there, it would still be a great goal, but it'd be like, okay, that's cool. But it's just the commentator it's historic. So I definitely think we need some type of commentators that are really interesting. I don't know if you heard of Speed, the Twitch streamer. So something like that, even though he doesn't really know anything about soccer, like if he was commentating games, that's why he's gone so big, because he'll just talk about the games and doesn't really know much, but he's just entertaining, energetic. So you need something like that where they're really passionate and emotional.
Yeah, I feel like I kind of made a bold prediction about a year or two ago. You mentioned Speed, right? Or I mentioned Castro 1021. There's another one called A9 Skills, and he's trying to transition from, I think, being a FIFA content creator to like legitimately doing commentary. It's really, really interesting. Do you see a world one day where, I don't know, imagine the 2026 World Cup or the 2030 World Cup, and we have, guys maybe like a Dempsey or a Landon, whoever is going to be that next U.S. star on a panel desk sitting next to a big Twitch streamer, a big YouTuber, and they're all, kind of blending these audiences together and offering takes on the game from their own perspective. Can you see a world where that's possible?
They could have done it this World Cup. Like Speed, I don't even know how much numbers he brought, but he brought millions of viewers to every game, especially American viewers that are watching him just because he was there. So if they could have done that, and it still would have benefited them. And I think that is the advantage or opportunity for America in the next World Cup where we're hosting. We have the opportunity to shift the kind of culture of American soccer if we're going to be interesting, or if we're going to be just like old fashioned or it's soccer, it's boring, or if we're going to do something like that, we're inviting Twitch streamers on to talk about the games, and that'll be a lot of interest in the game. Even like halftime shows, we could bring the NFL halftime shows or the Super Bowl halftime shows into American soccer, stuff like that could really just change the whole culture of American soccer.
Yeah, 100%. And like you mentioned, right, it could have happened already. You saw many viewers, Speed brought to the World Cup, and in general, that guy gets massive viewership regardless of what he's doing. But I think about I'm trying to think of leagues who've already done this. And are you familiar with Gerard Piqué's Kings League?
No, I haven't heard of it.
Okay, so it's really, really interesting. For those who haven't checked it out, I would highly recommend it. It's a great, interesting kind of soccer league he's put together. So the idea is Kings League, I believe it's either 5v5 or 7v7, however it works out, but there are crazy rules, and all the players are former pros. So they play in like some indoor facility in Spain. They're all former pros. There's one ringer in the entire league who's actually a current La Liga pro, but he's wearing a mask. No one knows who he is. He'll be unveiled at the end of the season. And what's crazy about it is the rules change at times throughout any given match. It can go from a 7v7 to a 2v2 on a full-length field. And what the beauty of it is the commentators are Twitch streamers, right? Like they brought in the most socially and culturally relevant personalities to bring crowds and audiences in mass. And they're layering that on top of the fact these are all former pros, names that at least millennials should relatively know from when they were playing. So I feel like that strategy, I feel like he gets it, right? Like he understands how important this is to the growth of the game, not just here in the States, right? But I would say in a country where it's already the biggest game on the planet, he's finding ways to innovate and layer on that type of entertainment that we're already talking about today. I would love to see our country adopt that at some point, but I guess we'll find out over time.
Interesting. Are those games, have you watched like a full game, or like they're really entertaining still?
They are. And what's crazy is that, like, the commentators, they're all Twitch streamers that are, of course, commentating remote. But, like, if you watch the broadcast, they do it live on Twitch. And on Twitch, they probably get anywhere from 200 to 400,000 viewers at a time. Yeah, so it's big. And the streamer themselves is, like, broadcasted in a very big way on a giant screen at the game. So, like, they're loud, they're there. If you're there in person watching and you didn't know who that Twitch streamer was, well, you're going to know who these content creators are. And then past that, for anybody who's watching on Twitch, the commentator speaking to you in a way that you already know and love, right? You're not muting it because it's a broadcaster that you don't know, that doesn't really know the culture or the vibes on Twitch. Like, it's someone that's culturally relevant to you, right? I feel like, and what's crazy is I think they're very close to finishing the season if they haven't done so already. They just this past weekend, I think, did a live match for the Kings League at the Camp Nou in Barcelona. And it generated like an extra $2 million in revenue for the club. It's crazy. Yeah. So, I mean, a businessman, unlike most out there. And I'm really curious to see how it continues to pan out, because I firmly believe it's the future. Like, I don't think fans necessarily care so much that it's not top tier pro. And this is what gives me encouragement for MLS. It doesn't have to be top tier pro. The entertainment just has to be solid. Right? You have to have a very solid formula for how you plan to keep the audience engaged and glued to whatever they're watching. And so if you get a chance to check it out, Bryce, I would highly recommend it. It's called Kings League, and they're definitely making some waves in the broader soccer spectrum. But yeah, back to your content though. I know we're kind of getting close to time here. I wanted to really quickly kind of talk about, I think what's next for your channel. You mentioned before it's evolved in a few different ways along the way. You've gone from coaching content to interviews now that paint a very strong picture of what an athlete's mental should look like. What's next for Winners Club? I mean, are you going to continue to focus more on soccer? I've seen plenty of sports and athletes enter that pod over time. What does the future of the channel look like?
Yeah, so I'm continuing to interview on my podcast athletes on different sports, but of course my soccer is still my core, so I'll probably still be focusing on them a lot. But I think there's a lot of opportunity going forward. As I said, there's a lot of athletes, whether in the college or pro sphere, they don't really get illustrated, don't really get spotlight on them, what they really went through, what their stories really went through. I think that's really important for brands and for fans of different pro leagues to really know who the athlete is. So I'm going to continue interviewing athletes, and we'll see where that takes me. As I've shown you on my journey, it can take different forms. So I might be doing this podcast for another year or two, and then it'll shift to something else. Who knows? But for now, I think there is definitely still a very big opportunity to continue to interview athletes and illustrate their stories and illustrate them.
I love that, man. And if there's one piece of advice that you could give to, let's say they're an aspiring content creator, or maybe just someone who's just now breaking into soccer and wants to start creating content around it. What's one piece of advice as someone who's doing this for a little while now? What's one piece of advice you'd give them?
Stay consistent. There's a lot of tips and tricks I could give you about just the social media stuff, but you'll learn that over time if you just stay consistent, post. So for example, for me, for the podcast, I try to put podcasts out every Monday. So, and that just forces me to create content, forces me to actually do it, even if I don't feel like I want to, even if I feel like, this episode isn't as great as it could be, I'm just going to put it out. And then the next episode, I'm going to get better and better and better. So just be consistent and continue improving each time.
Yeah, 100%, man. The ability to stick to it is massively underrated and should be talked about more. And understanding that it takes time, right? It takes time to accomplish anything you want. It's not going to happen overnight. I think if you're hoping to get rich off of YouTube in 6 months, maybe it's best you don't start the channel, right? Because it's just not going to happen. It takes a lot of time to grow an audience, to grow a community. So, Bryce, this was extremely appreciated, man. Thank you so much for coming on the pod today. I really appreciate it. I think there's a lot that our audience can gain from this. And I imagine that we're going to be sending more than a few viewers over your way to the Winners Club so they can get a better understanding of the value that you bring to players and aspiring soccer fans everywhere. So, Bryce Wilson, I really appreciate it. Guys, for those who stuck around to the very end of the show, I will link Bryce's channel down below in the description field. Feel free to check it out. Give him a subscribe and a like on his latest video. And Bryce, before we go, is there anything you want to shout out?
Just my channel. If you're going to put that down there, thank you for that. And yeah, that's about it. You can find me there and follow my socials through that.
Awesome, man. This was great. All right, guys. Well, it's going to run to the very end. Again, be sure to check out Box to Box on the GOLZtv YouTube channel. And of course, if you haven't seen it already, go check out GOLZ.tv for your unlimited free fan-made footy content today. My name is Jose Tejas. I'm the host of Box to Box. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time.